Nope.
Santa isn't real. The 3 words you use to crush a child. At a certain point in my childhood, I heard it from my friends, my classmates, my cousins, and eventually, even my parents. Apparently, I had reached the age where I was old enough to know the truth. But something never sat right with me. Maybe it was the vivid dreams I would have. In those dreams, I would see Santa. It would start with the thump, thump, thump on the roof. After carefully tiptoeing out of bed, I would peek around the corner to our fireplace. Out would come Santa himself, in his bright red suit. I even remember him waving at me. Unlike most kids, I was okay with Santa not being real. I always woke up with a bad feeling after having one of those dreams. It was the kind of feeling you would get in your chest when you knew you were in trouble, even though you did nothing wrong. As I got older, the dreams became less and less frequent until they simply stopped altogether. Christmas became less about the magic and more about the consumerism. The race to check everything off your list and get the best deals. Last year was no exception. Per usual, my son, Tommy, wanted the newest game that the rest of his classmates were expected to receive. "Are you going to ask Santa for it?" I remember asking him with a sly grin. Tommy hung his head, bearing a dejected frown. "Tommy?" I asked, gently rubbing his back. "What's the matter?" "Santa isn't real, Dad." I was caught off guard. Tommy was about the age I was when I found out, but I thought maybe he still believed. I wanted him to maintain the glee of Christmas only a child can feel, for as long as possible. But alas, here it was, the moment every Christmas celebrating parent dreads. I decided to be honest, but comforting. "Well, Tommy, maybe he doesn't exist in the way you think." "What do you mean?" "He might not be the big jolly guy in the suit, like in the movies, but as long as you believe in Christmas, he can always be real in your heart." I'll be honest, I didn't know what I was saying. Again, I was caught off guard, and I didn't exactly have a speech planned. Fortunately, what I said seemed to work. Tommy smiled and nodded energetically. That was a relief. He was a good kid. He deserved to enjoy the holiday as much as possible. It wasn't long until the big night was at our doorstep. My wife and I tucked Tommy into bed. "Remember, Santa's coming tonight," my wife said to Tommy. He looked up at me. I gave him a reassuring wink and nod. He smiled big before returning the nod and saying goodnight to us both. That night, I stayed up late, watching some of my favorite Christmas movies beside a roaring fire. I figured I had to, in order to sneak the gifts under the tree, going along with the festive charade for what would likely be the last time, now that Tommy was realizing the truth of things. At some point, I must have nodded off on the couch. I woke up and looked around, trying to shake off the haze that filled my head. I could see through the window that it was still the dead of night. It was at this point I realized I had not woken up organically. I was woken up by a sound, which I heard again, much more clearly. There was a rustling to my side. I carefully turned my head to face the direction of our tree. Standing beside it was a figure, donning a red jacket and hat. I sat there in disbelief. At first, I thought it was my wife playing some kind of prank or getting into character for Tommy. But I quickly realized that couldn't have been her. My wife isn't nearly that tall and lanky. This person was almost as tall as our 7-foot tree. The red jacket hung off their slender, bony figure like pounds of loose skin. I sat there, my mind trying to decide whether any of this was real or if it was just a sugar-fueled nightmare. It immediately brought me back to my childhood, to the dreams I used to have. Before I can process another thought, the figure moved. I watched as it raised its long arm up to an ornament on the tree. It was one of those ornaments that contained a photo. To be specific, it was a photo of Tommy. A hand slowly began to poke through the empty sleeve of the red jacket, revealing a set of dark, sharp fingers. I felt dread overtake me as I watched the hand firmly grasp my son's photograph. I tried to act, but all I was able to muster was a quick, desperate breath. With that, the creature shot its head in my direction. My blood immediately ran cold. I stared back into a pair of glowing red eyes that contrasted the black, decaying flesh of its face. It must have not noticed me before, because upon discovering me, sitting there, paralyzed with fear, it smiled. The smile was subtle, but it was enough to reveal a set of razor-sharp teeth and a black serpent-like tongue. It turned its decrepit figure in my direction and began to approach me. I heard the joints of this monstrosity popping and snapping with every exaggerated step. Before I could blink twice, it was bent down, and we were face to face. I could barely breathe. I thought I was going to pass out due to sheer lack of oxygen. This thing held up the photo of Tommy and widened its insidious smile. With a deep and sinister voice, it spoke.
"I'm here for the boy."
It wanted Tommy. Whatever this thing was, it wanted my son. I conjured every ounce of bravado I could find and replied with a firm, "No, leave." It cocked its head as if in confusion, or perhaps amusement. Before it or I could say another word, I heard something. "Dad?" I slowly turned my head to see Tommy standing at the foot of the stairs. He had woken up and stumbled upon us. And now, there he stood, with nothing between him and the atrocity that had made its way into our home. I felt the cold, scaly hands of this creature wrap around my face, and heard its vile voice for one last time.
"I found him."
I leaped off the couch, drenched in sweat. My heart was about to beat its way out of my chest as I frantically spun around the room. There I stood in my family room, where I had began the night. The sun was out now, beaming upon the tree, illuminating the room with vibrant colors. It was just a nightmare. I caught my breath and ran up to Tommy's room. There he laid, sleeping peacefully. I shut his door and made my way back to the couch, letting relief wash over me. I rushed to place the gifts under the tree. Shortly after, my wife and Tommy had both awoken. We enjoyed a cozy Christmas morning, exchanging gifts, listening to our favorite seasonal songs, and enjoying a delicious breakfast. As we ate, Tommy tugged on my sleeve, bearing a huge, excited grin. "You were right, Dad." "What do you mean?" "About Santa," he said. "You were right. He is real." I stared back at my son, feeling a knot develop in the pit of my stomach. "Last night, I saw you talking to him before you fell asleep. He actually talked to me too." "What did—" I stammered, collecting myself as best as I could. "What did he tell you?" "He said it was great to finally see you after so long. And he can't wait until next year, so he can see us both, again." Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed this special Christmas original story. If you enjoyed it, hit that thumbs up button. And if you really, really, really liked it, you can subscribe for future videos. And turn on that notification bell so you can be notified whenever there's a new upload. Pretty much everything now until Christmas Day will be Christmas themed. I love Christmas, and I love horror, so I'm combining them. Not only on this channel, but also in the podcast that can be heard on iTunes. Link in the description. I'll be doing 2 Christmas themed episodes for that. So if you're like me and can't get enough Christmas but also need your horror fix, let's enjoy the season together, shall we? Alright everybody. With that said, remember to stay safe out there. I'll be seeing you in the next video.